hotel accommodations provided by the New York Marriott Marquis, located on Broadway and featuring the view, New York's only revolving rooftop restaurant and lounge.
Time for our parting shots, and Bob Ryan fires first.
He grew up as dirt poor as any player he ever coached, the fatherless son of a welfare mother. Sports and sports alone saved him. He spent his off seasons broadening himself. He has visited more than 50 countries. He's climbed mountains, gone down the Amazon in a canoe, tried to break the speedboat record down the Mississippi River, and been on an expedition to find Noah's Ark. He was genuinely excited the first time he turned on the radio and heard people asking for his scalp. When I got here, nobody cared whether I won or lost, he said. I thought it was great. People cared. He had no concept of the phrase no comment, and he worried less about tradition and precedent than he did about figuring out ways to make any situation better. When Dick Schultz replaced Walter Byers as head of the NCAA, he said, "This is like a breath of fresh air leaking into the Kremlin." More people thought he was flat out crazy than ever thought he was brilliant, but that's because few people are used to dealing with truly honest human beings. "I'm not one bit afraid of exposing my faults, sins, and transgressions," he once said. He was better with less talented teams than he was with talented teams. I don't know, somehow that figured. But he's won more than 400 games, and I'll be shocked, and very angry if he doesn't wind up in the Hall of Fame. There hasn't been anybody better for college basketball in the past 25 years than Dale Brown, who announced this week he'll be leaving LSU at the end of the season. During his retirement announcement, he quoted Walt Whitman, Jonas Salk, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and both Popes John Paul I and II. There are a lot of great coaches, but Dale Brown is a true American original.
But he didn't quote Mike Lippica.
My 9-year-old son's day begins with the early morning sports center on this network. That isn't a plug, it's just the way things are at my house. By the time I get up, he knows everything that's happened the night before. I began to understand his love of sports by what finally became a familiar soundtrack, voiceovers about the previous night's highlights. Only something happened this week that happens more and more. I was afraid of the news for my own business, in front of my own kid. I sat in front of the television with him and watched him as he listened to these charges out of Dallas about a gun to a woman's head and forced sex. And in that moment, I wanted him to be anywhere else. I wanted to be anywhere else except where I was, watching him watch the news. This isn't about whether the Michael Irvin, Eric Williams story is true or not. Believe me, if this one isn't true, the next one will be. It's just that mornings like these show up in my house and everybody else's with a troublesome frequency. We've got all these new ratings for television shows now, like we've had for years in the movies. I'm just wondering when we start putting the same sort of ratings on the sports news.
William.
As I sail gracefully through the straits that divide North Wisdom from Baja Old Age, the NBA standings remind me daily of a void in my life. Like Bob Ryan, I was raised on the certainty that the Pope is Catholic, the mayor is Democrat, and the Boston Celtics will win the NBA title. Red Auerbach fired up so many victory cigars in the 60s and 70s, Fidel Castro named a Panatella in his honor. Now the only thing that gets smoked in the new Fleet Center is Red's beloved team. Last time I checked the standings, Russell's team, Heinsohn's team, Bird's team was 6-23. Name 5 current Celtics. Go ahead, I dare you. The only thing I recognize is the parquet floor frequently wiped up with them. Sadly, that historic pattern in life's linoleum only symbolizes a checkered present.
I'm buried in metaphors. I will have a parting shot of my own on the hardy souls who flocked to Lambeau Field yesterday after these messages.
Reported is presented by AT&T, your true choice.
Those of us sports reporters who sat in the shielded press box at Lambeau Field yesterday, warm and dry and bribed with bratwurst, couldn't understand how 3 wimps failed to show up for the San Francisco game. 3 of the 60,790 people who had tickets to the game were not in attendance. The other 60,787, a record for Green Bay, showed up and shivered in the cold rain and wind at the undomed stadium, which gives you a small idea of the loyalty of Green Bay fans. What happened to the 3 no-shows? My theory is 2 drowned on the way to the ballpark and the 3rd OD'd at a tailgate party. All 3, however, are expected to attend the game next Sunday. If it's against Dallas, I don't care if there's a blizzard and the temperature falls to 20 below, neither of which is unlikely in Green Bay in mid-January. there won't be an empty seat in the stadium or in the press box. Join us again next week for another edition of the Sports Reporters. Now stay tuned for Sports Center as Jack Edwards and Chris McHenry zero in on the 6 surviving Super Bowl hopefuls.